All right, we got another episode of the Ice Team podcast. We're here at the Dakota Angler Ice Institute in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. I'm excited because I have Durham with me on this. We've been co-hosts of this since day one, and we rarely get to do them together. So I'm excited. And last year at this event, we lost you like halfway through the podcast because you had to go give a seminar.
I forgot about that. I didn't even get to do the whole thing.
Yeah, today you get to. And who's our lovely victim?
Craig Oyler.
Hey, I was presented as I was a guest, not a victim.
Well, you know better. So, Craig Oyler hails from Rapid City, South Dakota. Craig's been on the Ice Team Pro staff for well over a decade.
Yeah.
You know, fishing guide out that way. We're going to touch on Craig's past, present, future today. We're also going to touch a little bit on Hooked on Hardwater, talk about that, and then just have a whole bunch of fun. So thank you, Craig, for coming on. For one, just so you know, the listeners, I asked Craig last night during pizza to jump on today. So there's been probably, I'm guessing, no preparation by any of us. This was kind of like a literally wing it.
I didn't know I was supposed to even be prepared at all.
I didn't know I'm ever supposed to be prepared in life
Prepared?
in general.
What's that?
Yeah. Jason, I think, thought he was in a different state. So he just kind of, we just picked him up today. He's going to jump on this and talk fishing. So he found the jersey and threw it on.
Yeah, it was just, it was at the doorway. They give them to you when you pay for a ticket. So I'm excited for this though, Craig, because you and I have known each other for a long time. And we get short windows where we get to sit and chat and spend some time together. But I'm going to be the student today a little bit. Because I know there's things that I'm going to learn about you that I don't know. And I'm glad those listeners, everybody listening, is going to get exposed to that too, because you're a special guy.
Yeah. So the teacher gets to be the student.
I'll share this with everybody, is that you never stop being the student. And if you do, then you're not living life. I don't care if that's with fishing, with your career, with anything, that you should always be the student.
Fair enough.
Based off of that, I do get a lot of people ask about how do you become a pro staff? How do you become a professional fisherman? And I said the most important thing you can do is listen to every single person you talk to, because you can learn something from them, guaranteed.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Think about guide clients. How much information we get from guide clients that there's times, I mean, obviously we're coaching them, whether it's on the ice or open water, but there's times where they teach you things that you go, you know, I didn't think that was going to work, but doggone it did.
Yeah.
And thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing that.
Yeah. You might hear some ambient background noise as you're listening. We literally are at the Dakota Angler Ice Institute filming on the busiest portion of Saturday, which is the busiest day. So we're looking at, I don't know, thousands of people today. Is that safe to say?
Easily, yeah.
So, I mean, I'm looking at people getting excited about ice fishing, looking at clam shacks, Vexilars, snow dogs, you name it. So that's what you might hear in the background is just good things happening. So safe enough. All right, Craig, let's get started. Question I think we ask most of our guests, Jason probably does as well, as we want to get into the nitty-gritty of who you are, what makes you tick, how'd you get involved in fishing at a young age? Like, let's talk a little bit about Craig Oyler, the person. Little Craig Oyler, how did it all start, and how did you get to where you are
Little
now?
Craigie.
Craigie.
I can't imagine. Were you ever little? You're a big dude.
I mean, I feel like I was.
Yeah.
Were you always the tallest kid in your class?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that I was. I can tell you that much.
Can you dunk a basketball?
I could.
Oh, nice.
There was a time, yes. So I did play basketball, but I never got a dunk in a game. I had my one opportunity, and it was always this joke, like, I got to get a dunk in a game. I have to. And I had my breakaway, and I was going to go and dunk, and I bricked the ball off the rim and landed on my back. And instead of people feeling sorry for me, they all laughed at me because they knew how bad I wanted to get an in-game dunk, and it did not happen.
Is there a video that exists of this?
Thank God, no. This was pre-cell phones, pre all of that, so no, there's no video.
Well, it could be lower hoop to 8 feet and then reenact it.
I mean, at this age, I'm pretty sure I'd break bones.
Well, I had a buddy, not to get off topic, friend of mine in college, really good basketball player. His name's Shamari. He's like 6'5", 6'6", baller. And he would always win the Midnight Madness dunk contest down in Mankato. And just a couple of years ago, at the time, we're in our 40s now, but just about 40, he's like, I'm going to see if I can do it. And he videotaped himself like at a YMCA. He's now living in Atlanta. And he could just barely dunk still. And I'm telling you, this guy jumped over me to dunk in a dunk contest at one point in his life, and now like barely could get it, and he was sweating. So, it's funny how you lose your vertical when you get older.
I used to be able to dunk.
Yeah.
No.
I was gonna say, like, what's the rest of the story? Dunk what?
I figured it was cookies and milk or something.
Yeah, well, obviously there was a lot of that.
All right, Craig, back to the original question. You as a kid, what got you involved in fishing, hunting? I know you hunt a ton as well.
Yep. No, it was all my dad. My dad, avid outdoorsman, and he had me out on the ice when I was 3 years old. I was the oops of the family. My brother's 5 years older than me, and I think my dad learned you can't force a kid into fishing. So he would take my brother and just make him go, and because he wanted the extra fish for the limit and all of that. Well, then he kind of turned my brother off on it. So when he took me out fishing, it was all about having fun, making sure I enjoyed it, and he did a really good job. When I was 3 years old, it was fun. Everything we did, we had fun doing it, and thankfully we were successful at catching some fish too. So I just naturally was drawn to it, and ice fishing for me was also, growing up, it was the best part about it is it leveled the playing field for everyone, because we couldn't afford to have a boat at that age, and no one could fish where I couldn't when the lake was froze. So it leveled the playing field, and that's why I really, really was drawn to that, even more so than open water fishing then.
Yeah.
Did your brother ever kind of come around and get interested in fishing?
Nope.
Just never?
And it was funny, he hunted too, and he was a great shot. He was probably one of the best shooters in the family, and he just had got turned off to all of it. He's a phenomenal dude and one of my favorite people in the world, but he works for the computer, or our hospital, in the computer department, and takes care of all that stuff. That's his world, and the outdoors is my world.
Well, that's awesome too, though.
Yeah, absolutely.
We need guys like your brother
100%.
to make everything tick as well. So he found his passion.
Yep.
Yeah.
And going back to that passion, that passion for the outdoors was always in me. I mean, it truly was, and thankfully my dad was right there with it, and so he continued that on. But when I was 12 years old, I started guiding, and it was not legal by any means, but I was guiding, but the people would have to come to the house, pick me up, and then take me to the lake, and then I would show them how to fish, and I'd build my own fishing rods, and I didn't have a Vexilar back then, but I just took care of everything myself and just showed them where to go, how to do it, and what to do, and it was a blast.
Do you remember being that age? And I remember my early days of guiding, and I made plenty of mistakes. You remember any mistake that you made that stands out in your mind, like, oh man, I really screwed up there?
I don't remember anything. I'm sure there was plenty. I don't remember them. Thankfully, I blocked those out. But the one thing that I was always self-conscious about collecting money. And so it was very hard for me to get, it'd be like $20 in a Mountain Dew and I'm good to go, and it's like, man, it probably could have made a couple $100, but it was such an awkward conversation to have, like, all right, how much do I owe you, kid?
I think that's really one of the hard things of that you really need to kind of work into as you become a guide, is that whole transaction at the end. I know for myself, even today, after doing it for over 3 decades, that we still get to the point where the people go, what do I owe you for the day? And these are some people that you've guided for 20 years plus, and you just want to say, you don't owe me anything.
Yeah, but you can't.
You can't, because it does cost money to go and conduct business, for sure.
Yeah, it's the job. It's a job at hand. I mean, I find myself at times as giving a discount. Hey, I'll take $50 off or something like that, like helping somebody out. But it's always you have to just kind of, there's the going rate. Here's what I'll do for you, and this is kind of how I pay my bills. And you're spot on, Jason. But it is always, it never, I don't know. Jason's been guiding longer than me, but it never changed. It still feels uncomfortable, even with somebody you're like, I've guided you 15 years in a row. Like, my rates, and it's like, do you always wonder, like, they ask the question because they want you to say, oh, don't worry about it? Do you feel like that sometimes
No, I think they do just because they want to make sure they have the right information,
Yeah.
probably more
Yeah.
than anything.
They
But
don't want to be disrespectful or something, maybe.
I want to know, is Mountain Dew still your drink of choice?
It was, but back to not being able to dunk anymore. I felt like I might have needed to lose some weight, so I've recently cut sugar out of my diet altogether.
Entirely?
Well, I mean,
Did you eat a donut today here?
Absolutely no.
Good for
And
you.
you know how hard that is to walk by those donuts and not eat one?
Yeah.
Actually, I don't, because obviously I don't do that.
Yeah, no.
How was your donut, Jason?
Oh, don't get me started. I don't even really like donuts. I honestly don't. And
Now you hate them.
I don't know. I don't hate them. I don't hate them. I never crave a donut. I never
Yeah.
crave ice cream. But there are times when they're in my life that I will engage with one.
Yeah.
And so I decided to this morning, and it was the most disappointing donut I've ever had in my life. So really, it's good that you didn't try to eat one anyway. You just would have thrown it in the garbage after one bite and then felt remorse. So
There you
I
go.
And
did
then
that for you.
Jason came to me and said, "This donut's horrible. Take a bite."
Try it.
And I did against better judgment. And I think it was frosted dog food.
I don't
Not
know what
bad, huh?
happened. Something happened. So somebody in the donut factory didn't hit the right lever.
Yeah, the rest of them, I mean, Scott Merwin brought in donuts for the entire squad today, and they, I think for the most part, are wonderful donuts. Everyone loved them, so that was kind of cool. I mean, but yeah, I thought that was funny. It tastes like dog food.
That one fell on the floor.
Yeah, you probably could have ate that one, and it probably would have been a part of your diet, because I don't think there's any sugar in it.
Yeah, it was bad.
Yeah.
Well, Craig,
Cool.
then after, you kind of get this introduction. We'll get back on track here.
Yeah.
After you get this introduction to ice fishing, and you start taking people out, where does it go from there?
Then, ice fishing was always there, but then just driven to fish. And so summertime in the Blackhills, we have a lot of creeks, and it's kind of a known trout fishery. So then I started creek fishing in the summers just so I could keep scratching that fishing itch. And that was when I was in high school, I wasn't home 4 days out of 5 or 4 days out of 5 during the school week anyway.
I was going to say, just so you know, there's 7 days.
I know. I'm
a school teacher, so I know this kind of stuff.
So
Different math in Rapid City.
that's right. But I was 8 miles from a very well-known creek that produced a lot of big trout, and so I was up there, and I would fish till dark, and I'd usually bring a trout home and cook it on the grill, and that was what I would eat. And it got to where my mom was like complaining to my dad, like, "Hey, he's got to be home more." And of course, my dad, he's like, "Think of what else he could be doing at
Right.
16 years old. He's fishing. Just leave him alone." And they did, and that was, I mean, I chased those creek trout for so long, and it's a lot of fun. But
Yeah.
then,
There's a great quote that I heard when I was much younger, that my neighbor friend loved to fish so much. He would come home on his break from the grocery store, and he would go out on the lake and fish. And his dad went to the resort owner that was the neighbor and complained and said, "You got to help me with my son. We got to do something about this. He just lives and breathes fishing. That's all he wants to do. He'll come home from his lunch break and go fishing." And the resort owner said, "Be grateful, because he can get in a lot of trouble on Main Street, but he can't get in trouble on the lake." And there's a lot of truth to that.
absolutely.
What kind of trout were you catching?
Rainbows mainly. There's a few brown trout mixed in there, but it was mostly just all rainbow trout. And we, at one point in time, that it was Spring Creek, it's called, and it was in Field and Stream magazine as one of the 10 best trout fisheries in the nation. And we would have days where we'd catch 15 fish over 24 inches.
Wow.
And, I mean, just incredible days of trout fishing. And
And that's in the Rapid City area, western South Dakota.
south of
Okay.
Rapid City, but yeah.
Yeah, that's
right,
cool.
Right in the Blackhills there.
Yeah.
Because I've never really done any stream trout fishing for rainbows. I've done some brown trout fishing, but how are you catching? What would you do?
So I would use yarn flies, but I was using traditional spinning gear. I never got into the fly fishing world,
Sure.
but I'd use those yarn flies. Brown trout spawn in the fall, rainbow trout spawn in the spring, so you're just trying to float some eggs down, and those yarn flies just mimic eggs floating down the creek, and the trout loved them.
So you weren't a night crawler, a corn fishermen?
No, that was me. That was me at the Coon Rapids Dam.
Much to my father's dismay, I did not use corn
So,
and night crawlers.
Does it bother you? Like, it has to frustrate you bad that you turned down the role for A River Runs Through It and gave it to Brad Pitt. Like, do you regret that decision?
I mean, at this point in my life, when I'm still working construction for a living, yes, I probably should have taken that role.
Do you hold any animosity towards Brad Pitt?
No,
No.
That movie is one of the best.
It is.
really-
It is.
I love that
Does
movie.
that, as much as I don't like to fly fish, I'm just not a fan of it.
Yeah.
It makes a guy want to
That's
fly
a
fish.
wonderful movie.
Yep.
Yeah, that's good. So I know at one point, talking ice fishing and evolving, you formed a group, I believe, called Ice Anglers or Iceaholics.
Iceaholics Anonymous.
Iceaholics Anonymous.
Yeah.
Yeah. How did that all? I think when I first met you, wasn't it when I was working at Thorn Brothers?
Yep.
And
yep.
you came out to the event. You had a giant tip up.
Yep. The world's largest
Yes.
tip up.
I
And
remember
that's,
that.
Yes.
That's when we first met each other
Yep.
15, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And how did all that come up? I mean, obviously you're an ice nut, but explain that whole story.
Apparently, I just have too much time on my hands, I guess. I don't know. I think it was Dan Hogue at Cold Snap Outdoors.
Mm-hmm.
I think him and I were talking, and it's middle of summer, and I'm talking ice fishing. He's like, "What is wrong with you? That's all you do is talk about ice fishing." I'm like, "Oh, I'm an iceaholic," and he's like, "You got something there."
Yeah.
It's like, well, maybe I should start Iceaholics Anonymous, and I mean, obviously there was no money made off of that, but it actually had a pretty decent following.
It caught
And-
on.
Absolutely.
That was, when Facebook wasn't a huge thing yet, but there wasn't a lot of groups there, so I started that Iceaholics Anonymous page, and it kind of exploded, and it, since has ran its course. But yeah, it was
Yeah. Your
lot of
stickers
fun.
were on buckets, on truck
Yeah.
windows. I mean, I
Yeah.
remember your stickers. My kids had them on the walls of their bedroom. I remember Iceaholics Anonymous well. And then I
Yeah.
really remember the giant tip up you used to bring around.
So I was doing a project that I at that time I was a superintendent for a large construction company. I'm still with the same company, but project manager now. But as a superintendent, and it was one of those jobs where it was just all subcontractor work. And so, I would babysit the subs as they're doing all the work, and I did find myself having a lot of time, so I just started thinking, what about a big tip up? I don't even know why that crossed my mind, but I started drawing how I would build it and what I would do, and I took a wire spool from the electrician, and that was the big spool for it, and just started fabricating all that stuff, and then that night at home I started assembling it all, and it's
Did it work? Was it a functional tip up?
100%. I never caught a fish off it, but it was 100% functional.
Hey, two things. Number one, does the Iceaholics Facebook page still exist? Is it still online live?
It does, yes.
Cool. I'm going to check that out tonight.
Yeah. I don't think there's been anything posted on it in
I'm
4
going
years,
to post
but
on it tonight.
Durham's going to, bring that back out of the grave.
Yeah. And then I forgot all about the tip up. I think that's when you and I first met too.
probably.
I know that I walked up to you and was like, dude, this is awesome. Tell me about this.
Typosaurus Rex. That was the name
Typosaurus
of it. And
Rex.
it had a logo made for it, stickers on it, and
Yes.
everything.
Does it still
You had-
exist?
So I gave it to Tej Stouffer.
Yeah, from Recycled Fish.
Yeah, thinking that would be just a good talking point to get people into his booth, and I think he still has it up in the rafters of a shed somewhere.
How can we get this
I can talk
to the
to Teach.
St. Paul
I
Ice Show?
talk to him all the time. He's a wonderful
He's
dude.
a wonderful guy.
I have a feeling if we wanted it, he'd
Let
give
me
it back.
let me reach out to him.
Let's see if we can make this happen.
That would be
yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, that
The
thing is cool.
resurrection.
Yep.
Yeah. Now it would fit down a normal ice hole.
I
Or do you
think
have to,
it'd have to be a 10-inch hole.
Okay.
Yeah. I always thought I'd go catch a lake trout on it, but I just never got it done because it was a ginormous pain to carry around.
You,
We have to catch a
you-
fish on that if we get it back.
I was going to say, if you get that in my hands, I will make that happen.
All right.
Durham will
But
catch
I would
a
think
fish.
that you would want to be a part of it.
Absolutely. 100%.
Since you, oh, well.
Yeah.
Maybe it should be in your hands then.
Yeah.
No, we'll go
Or just
burbot.
come-
We'll go burbot fishing. Gen's invitation.
I got to tell you that tip ups, in my mind, are not the greatest for eel pout.
Really?
No. We just haven't done as well on them, and you do have a certain elevation of mortality involved. I know a lot of people that are trying to catch eel pout just for sustenance, that they'll do that, but I don't see a lot of success with it either.
Okay.
It's that way with catfish too.
Really?
I've never caught a catfish on a tip up in 23 years of guiding for 'em.
Wow.
Tip downs, like set lines, rod holders, yes, but on a tip up, never one time have I had.
Why would that be different?
Never
Right.
had a client catch one on there, never. Never.
I wonder if part of it is because you don't use them.
Well, we use them, but I think with cats, you don't catch a fish when it bites. They mouth
Right.
it, they tease it,
Right,
they taste
right.
it, they hit it, their barbels rub up against your lure. So, like, I think the flag gets tripped, and there's never a fish on it.
Sure.
It's not like a walleye, they come up and eat it. Like, they mouth it, and then they trip that flag, and I think it never goes. Like, you watch a set line go down, that rod tip kind of teeters, comes down a little bit, teeters, comes back up, teeters some more, and then finally just starts to dip. Well, think about a tip-up scenario. Like, that flag was tripped. That lure does some kind of shake, shimmy, shrammy. That fish swims away, right? Like, if a flag trips and you don't have a fish on, you don't catch that fish. I don't care if it's a walleye. Like, if your flag trips on the tip-up and you have not hooked that fish, the likelihood of you actually catching that fish is slim to none if you think about it. Does that make sense?
I'm thinking about it. Give
So
me a
if your
minute.
flag trips and
Kinda
the
sounds
fish
like common
and the
sense,
fish
doesn't it?
isn't actually on there, like it trips the flag,
Yeah.
it usually never comes back and then bites it.
Sure.
Like, it might have bit it, the flag trips, and it takes a while for it to spin because the fish is sitting there with it in its mouth. But if that flag actually trips and it doesn't actually have it in its mouth or hook itself because it false tripped it, it's not like the fish comes back and takes it again.
Well, I would say in most situations, probably because the bait goes to the bottom with whatever
Correct.
weight you've got on there.
Yes.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But never say never.
Yes.
But,
Yes.
you know, and that's where I'm such a big fan of the Arctic Warrior. I think everyone knows that.
Yeah.
But
You're a
that's where I
huge
think
user of
those are successful because you have the rod that comes down and then it ends up setting the hook on the fish for you. Whereas, you know, it doesn't give it just all free spool where the catfish can drop it. It's
And now I want to use the Predator tip up on cats, but I can't because it's illegal in Minnesota.
come to South Dakota.
But I'd be interested to see success rate. And you talked about mortality rate with tip-ups.
Yeah.
And that's like my argument, not to get political, against the rule in Minnesota is like, how many times have I come up to a tip-up on a guide ship, especially if it's a largemouth bass, which is common in central Minnesota, where that fish has got that lure, what's coming out its butt because it's been running around for 90 seconds with this, where I think with the Predator tip-up automatic hook setting device, you set the hook on that fish. You probably get it hooked right where I would hook it on a hook set, not down its gullet. And I think your mortality rate would get better. My opinion. I think a lot of anglers gut hook fish on tip-ups.
Agreed.
Yeah.
We wouldn't use them for lake trout for that very reason because we were very die-hard catch and release lake trout fishermen, and
Right,
you'd gut hook way too many of them on a tip-up.
But a Predator tip-up, I mean, it's no different than you jigging, working a fish. It comes up on your Vexar, they bite, you set the hook.
Yep.
It bites that, it sets the hook. I mean, I would think automatic fisherman type devices like this, like the Predator tip-up, hook setting devices, would relieve some of that mortality rate on a tip-up. I don't know. What are your thoughts on? I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, there are times, too, though, that it's not the right choice. Because, say, I think about fishing a tip-up with big minnows for northern pike, and there's times where we don't set the hook right away.
Right.
Because we need to let that fish take it. And, you know, when a pike hits a minnow, they'll hit it in the side, and they'll continually shake its head to turn the bait to swallow it head first, because a pike can't swallow, like a sunfish, for instance, backwards. They choke on it.
Sure.
So it takes a little bit of time. But, yeah, I mean, I think it would.
I'm anxious to hear people's stories on that over the course. I mean, we're selling a pile of them. Mm-hmm. Online, it's like Clam's #1 seller on their website.
And for the listener, too, that doesn't know, we were talking about using it as an automatic hook set.
Yeah.
You don't have to.
Yeah.
This is multi-purpose. If you want one in the format that it is a rod and reel, but with a tip-up flag as an indicator, now, awesome.
Like your pike scenario.
Exactly.
You could have a pike set up, you could have it eat it, you could run over, grab the rod, keep the bail open, let the fish do its thing, set the hook when you feel appropriate.
I bought a whole bunch of them for guide trips this year because that's absolutely ideal.
Yeah, I like it. Going back to Isoholics Anonymous,
Yes.
and maybe tying it into this specific event. I mean, like, you've been at this event since day one, pretty much.
Yep.
Now, how do you think this event's evolved for the ice fishing community, and how has it evolved so that it's become a better experience? I mean, I kind of know the answer, but I think our listeners maybe weren't there day one. Maybe weren't there when Iceholic Anonymous, you had a booth.
Well, I was with Dan, but
Yeah, I remember
I
you
was
had-
selling the stickers and the hats there
Yeah.
through his booth. But yeah,
Excuse me. So how has this event specifically evolved to benefit the ice angler, you think?
well, just the growth of the industry as a whole. It's funny to see how these places, and Todd Heitkamp has done such a great job evolving this event. But yeah, that year one, it was in the back of his store, kind of in a warehouse, or the storage room pretty much, and I couldn't tell you how many people come through, but I kept thinking, man, this is the coolest thing I've ever been a part of, because that was the first show I ever worked. I was working with Dan and Cold Snap, and then I think I met you at the Thorne Brothers that following year. But yeah, just every year Todd would continue to grow it, and you look at the amount of products that we're able to see and actually play with before you buy it, and I think the innovation evolves from stuff like this. People come to these shows and they start thinking, I wonder what I could do differently.
Yeah.
2 years later, they have a booth here with their idea, and I love that.
Yeah.
And,
too.
and I think ice fishermen notoriously are tinkers anyway, so they're always messing with modifying and doing whatever they can to make things suit them a little bit more. And yeah, places like this, I think they help create that ingenuity.
Yeah. You made a comment yesterday when we were talking about one of the first Dakota Angler events, and a story, and it had to do with Gens. And you're saying he stole some of Todd's thunder, or not some of Todd's thunder. He had a seminar, but no one cared about his topic because
That wasn't at this show.
no.
It was at a different one. But yeah, Dave, on his way down to come do a seminar, he had stopped and he fished at Bitter Lake, and he'd got a bunch of 13, 14-inch perch, and so he had a cooler full of these perch, walked in to do a seminar, and he just flipped open his cooler, and everyone saw the perch, and he never did a seminar that day. Everyone wanted to hear about perch fishing on Bitter Lake and looking at his perch. I mean, what a great, if you don't have a good topic for a seminar, I mean, talk about creating one, right?
Bring some fish.
Well,
That's
Dave,
right.
now, if you know his seminar angle, is when I first started working for Clam, and I'd have to help organize the seminars and set you guys up on whatever, everyone had a topic. The last 4 or 5 years, Dave prefers to not have a topic. He just wants to talk fishing. And he just always says Q&A with Dave, because I think he's learned, per your story, it doesn't matter what I pick as a topic. I'm just going to answer questions from the audience.
Right.
I mean, it's Gens.
Yeah.
So he's like, I'll just answer questions from the audience all day. So I mean, that he kind of wrote his own book years ago, whether it's the perch story or anything else, where people just want to talk to him.
Well,
It's crazy.
even along those lines, when I've been asked to do seminars, I kind of followed your lead from a few years ago, where we're just going to do a Q&A, because
Yep.
I think you had made the comment, why am I going to talk about something that half the room doesn't want to talk about? Why not talk to them about what they want to? And for me, a lot of people do know me as a lake trout fisherman, but I can come to this show and do a seminar on lake trout fishermen, but how does it really relate to 80% of the people?
They want
Probably
perch or
10%
walleyes,
of the
yeah.
people. And so I started doing the Q&A thing, and I'd even bring in a couple other guys, so let's just do a panel to where, maybe I'll talk trout or whatever, then someone else can talk panfish and go that way. And those feel like they're a lot more interactive and a lot more appreciated by the audience too.
That one year, my format for it was where I did the seminar in reverse. So I said the crowd is going to actually give the seminar.
Well, I thought you were going to say you like pig Latin. Like I was like, oh, let's hear you talk in reverse.
No, it was where I said, I have a lot of experience ice fishing. I know a lot of things, but there are an incredible number of people in this room that also have vast knowledge.
Good point.
So let's put a question out there and let's solve it. And it was really interesting because a guy, he raised his hand right away and he said, do you know of a great knot tying tool? Do you use a knot tying tool?
I don't.
Matt?
No.
I don't. I see ads for them.
There's one in
periodically.
the fly fishing market that's
Right.
wonderful. I've seen
Right.
it.
But this man said, I'm looking for a fly fishing tool. I said, knot tying tool. I don't use them. I said, does anybody else here? And the guy even said, he said, the reason I'm asking is I only have one hand. And he held up his arm he had a hook. And so he said, it's tough to tie knots. And another man in the audience raised his hand and he said, yeah, there's one that I really like to use. I have arthritis so bad that I have difficulty tying knots. So I have one that I found that I really like. Those two gentlemen solved a problem together. I had nothing to do with it. I was just the catalyst in front of the crowd, right? And that's how the whole seminar went. And that's what's important with fishing, is that give people the information that they want, that they want to know. It doesn't make sense for me to preach about fishing eel pout down here in South Dakota where nobody wants to catch eel pout.
That's why I don't do PowerPoints.
No.
For that reason, it's been a decade or more because I don't get through my second slide. Because if the PowerPoint is created, it's created, like you said, around something. How to catch bluegills in the weeds, how to fish walleyes at night, whatever it is. Well, then I learned, like, second question is, why do you use, like, fluorocarbon line to catch finicky bluegills? Or why do you do this? And then you just go on a tangent. It's like the seminar this morning. I just bring stuff on the table more as props and then just start talking. And then I learned real quick, oh my gosh, we started talking about forward-facing sonar today in my seminar for 20 minutes. And like, literally, that was like 20 minutes of the seminar is forward-facing sonar and this and this and this. And like, so you just never know. Like, it's spot on. And kudos to all of our seminar speakers and a lot of our pros, right? Like, we're equipped with the knowledge. It's so good. Like, any of these guys or gals speaking this weekend at Dakota Angler, like, you could probably ask them any question. And that's one thing, Merwin said in a little video we did on Ice Team yesterday on the Facebook pages. He made a comment when we were talking about coming on down to the show, and he's like, here's the deal. We want you to come talk to us. As promoters, we're not here to be egotistical or be on a pedestal. Come talk to us. Bring your questions. Ask us questions. We want to talk fishing with you. And I think that's one thing that I've seen this industry gravitate towards, pro staff being promotional staff, right?
Yeah.
Learning things, bring your questions, go off on tangents, get excited. Just like you said, they have something they want to learn about. And Jason alluded to at the beginning of this podcast, we have things we want to learn from other people.
Absolutely.
All the time. So that's pretty cool. I think we should talk. I'm interested, honestly, Jason, when we got Craig on, is Rapid City. Like Rapid City in general, fishing in that region of our country. I think maybe it's underappreciated, underutilized. I don't know. I have a sneaky suspicion it is. My Thane, we all know Thane Jensen, comes out there and helps you with an event, which we'll talk about here as well. And he's like, it's so fun out there. There's so many opportunities that people don't realize. I mean, it could very well be on your bucket list, right? Don't you think?
It should be. I mean, it truly should be. Scenery is second to none as far as I'm concerned. And growing up there, I know I take it for granted what I have around there. But I tried moving away. I moved to Nebraska for college, and then I moved to Duluth, Minnesota for a year to start my construction career. And I came home for a wedding and just remember seeing the Blackhills and seeing what it all had. And I was like, holy cow, I miss this place, and realize how special it really is. But the fishing, we have it all there. I mean, there's truly nothing we don't have except, well, I guess, no eel pout, sorry. But
I'm offended.
Right? But no, it is. And when I first got involved with Ice Team and everything, I remember at one of those Shack Mod get-togethers, you talk about everyone being approachable. Well, Dave Gens was there, and I remember walking up to him shaking because holy cow, I get to meet Dave Gens. And you know how he is naturally just started, so tell me about yourself. Where are you from? And
right.
I said, Blackhills. He goes, I drove through there once. I've always wanted to fish that area. And within a year, he was out fishing with me.
Yeah.
And it's like, holy cow, how did all this happen? And I mean, he's been out several times since then. And I think he realizes, it's a fun bite. We have quality fish. We don't get the super finicky, late season bites like a lot of places do. I don't know why that is, but our bites we don't have that midwinter doldrums where it gets to be tough. And I don't want to say they're easy or they're dumb, but maybe it's high elevation, lack of oxygen, and they're not the smartest fish in the bunch. I don't know, but we do. I mean, we have lakes that produce 1 pound bluegills, and we have good crappie lakes and good walleye lakes, and so I think it is a destination. And you kind of alluded to hooked on Hardwater a little bit, and I don't know if you want to get into that now, but
I do, because I've wanted to go out and help with this event for years. You've invited me so many times, and being a school teacher, I just can't take those. I don't get the time to come and do it. I wish there was a way to make this work, and I know at some point in my life, when I'm in my 60s and retired, I will finally get to come out and do it.
So see you in 4 years. You opened yourself up for that one.
Yeah, I was like, someone, it's either me or Craig are going to take a shot at this.
Oh my gosh, why do I hang out with you?
Why do you do it? But yeah, no. So my dad, not only was he an avid outdoorsman, he's also he works at the Rapid City Club for Boys still to this day. He's tried to retire, they just won't let him. He's been there 57 years, I think.
Holy cow!
He started when he was 16 years old, and he worked his way up to executive director there. And so with him being there, I grew up at that place too, and so I spent a lot of time there. And at I don't know, well, it had been 11 years ago, I was trying to figure out how can I get ice fishing and the Rapid City Club for Boys, how can I combine them and make something happen here. And so, we thought about doing a tournament. Well, a lot of these boys are underprivileged, less than ideal homes that they come from. So doing a tournament, it's like, do I really want every kid but the kid that got first place to walk away disappointed? And it's like, I don't really want that. I want them to have a positive experience no matter what. So then what's the next step? Well, let's, get them paired with guys and just catch fish. Well, thankfully I was involved enough with Ice Team and the other companies that I had a wealth of knowledge that I could call and say, hey, would you be willing to come out here? And that first year, so many people I called, they're like, I've always needed an excuse to come out and fish the Blackhills. So let's do it. And we started with 40 pros, and I think we had 52 boys or something like that. And it was...
What's it at now?
We're maxed out at 60 pros and about 75 boys. We just can't accommodate more pros than that.
Yeah.
And it's a ton of work, but it's grown to be such a monster for everyone involved in the behind the scenes anyway.
Are there any kids on the waiting? Is there any
no,
kids
we
that don't
we
get
don't
to go?
Nope, we don't turn boys away. But it just naturally ends up to be about 75. It'd be ideal if we had one pro per boy, but one of my biggest fears was always you end up with the exact same amount. Well, then a boy couldn't make it, so then you have a pro that shows up and he doesn't even have a boy to take out. So I was like, let's just overextend the boys and, just keep the pro numbers down, just so guaranteed everyone has at least one boy to take care of.
Yeah, makes sense.
But yeah, it's pretty cool because it's high poverty in our area. Like I said, a lot of those boys come from single parent or no parent homes. They're living with a grandma or some kind of situation. That very first year, my dad had got up and talked, and he just said, so of the 50 boys we had out, he said 10 of them live with both parents. And, then he said 14 of them live with a grandparent, and 2 of them are in the foster care system, and then 5 of them are homeless. They're living out of a car right now, and that's the kind of the opportunity we're giving these boys that they just don't have. And so I also remember a lot of times the pros would be talking to their boys, and it was their first time leaving the city limits. They had no idea they had that in their backyard, literally 15 miles away from them. They'd never seen areas like that, and so that's when I realized this wasn't just a fun way to get some buddies out here to fish and get some boys involved. This needed to happen.
So how does, maybe explain to our listeners, the event's called Hooked on Hardwater out of Rapid City, South Dakota. Maybe explain to them what you do, how it's set up, because I know it's super cool. It's like a 2-day deal.
Yeah, so it's turning into about a 4-day deal, just because a lot of the pros, when they come out, they want to come a little early so they can fish around the hills, but then Thursday we have what we call the Craig Teason Memorial Tournament, and Craig Teason was my father's best friend. He was my very first client when I was 12 years old as a guide, and I was named after him, and he tragically passed away 7 years ago now. So we have this tournament kind of in honor of him because he was a huge supporter of the Boys Club. He was a politician, and but his roots always went back to the Boys Club, And so we just wanted to keep his memory alive that way. But then, so that's on Thursday. Friday, a lot of people go out and they fish for lake trout. Then Friday night is when the magic starts happening, because everyone goes down to the Rapid City Club for Boys. Because when I started talking about it, I wanted, if you were to come out, I want you to see the facility that is the Rapid City Club for Boys, see what you're supporting and why you're supporting it and why it's needed. And so you spend the evening there, you meet your boy, and that's where you two go from strangers to best friends in an hour. And so then you're there the rest of the night, you're playing games, you're eating dinner, they have prizes, all sorts of fun stuff. Dodgeball always ends up at the dodgeball.
How does that? Our pros get their butts whooped?
It is amazing. Those 13, 14-year-old boys can throw a dodgeball so hard, it's scary. I mean, you see it in the school system, but
no, we don't allow dodgeball anymore. That's a big no-no.
Really?
Oh, really?
No,
You're kidding.
no, I'm not kidding.
You can't play dodgeball?
It's really there's a lot of things around dodgeball in the public schools that just
Oh, boy.
Thankfully, the Rapid City Club for Boys, I should go back, was part of the Boys and Girls Club of America.
Okay.
But then when it was Boys Club of America, when they transitioned to Boys and Girls Club, my dad really wanted to stay away from letting girls in, just because of the socioeconomics of that, the boys that were there. It's awkward enough. Then you have throw girls in the mix at that age. He just wanted to keep them out, and thankfully Rapid City has a very strong it's Girls Incorporated, it's called. So there was a place for them to go already, so it's not like they were just leaving them high and dry. Right. And so the Boys and Girls Club made them change their name. They could no longer be the Rapid City Boys Club, so they changed the Boys Club, or the Rapid City Club for Boys. And so with that, it's a single unit organization, and it is the busiest single unit organization in the nation. It has, I think it serves 1,200 boys a year.
Wow.
Yeah, it's insane. In the summertime, there's 450, 500 boys go through the door every day.
Unbelievable.
And it's not funded corporate. It's all by private funding and everything. But long story short, what I was getting at is they don't have all those political rules, so they can still play dodgeball. There's no one higher up saying you guys can't have dodgeball happening.
So Durham could show up and play dodgeball.
100%. And
I'm making a drive just for that.
You'd be so bad because you haven't played in so long.
What are you talking about?
You just said you can't even play it, so you're going to show up and just get. I can imagine you and Thane on one team.
Oh,
like I can't imagine. I mean, like I heard Cummings is quite a dodgeball player though.
It's amazing. It truly. Everyone walks away sore, hurt, out of breath, but they look forward to it next year.
Yeah.
I mean, they cannot wait to go back and play it next year. It's pretty awesome.
Okay.
I can't remember what the year one when it wasn't planned, but can't remember what pro it was. But their post on Facebook was them sweating and out of breath, and he said, "This year's dodgeball game sponsored by Ben Gay and Tylenol."
Sounds about right.
So I might not have played for a long time, but do me a favor, okay? Pretend to throw a dodgeball at me. Just pretend to do it. Yeah, caught it. You're out. See that?
Yeah.
It's like riding a bike.
You got skills.
I know.
I'm impressed.
Yeah, that was impressive.
Hey,
I flinched.
I got a question for you.
The people listening that can't watch what we're doing right now are probably like, well, what is going on
Yeah,
here?
right?
I caught it.
He did. He caught it, in his face.
So say I'm a 14-year-old boy, and I come to the club in the summer. I walk in the door. What are all the things I'm doing there? Why am I going there?
So for a lot of the boys, it's their safe place.
Yep.
I mean, it's truly mom, dad, grandma, whoever's at work. So this is the one source of structure they have in their life. But so you walk in, they'll serve in the summertime. They have breakfast for them in the morning. They have games room. They have older boys activities. Like their games room is pool, bumper pool. They invented a game called carpet ball, which is probably the greatest game ever. The executive director before my dad got sick of boys grabbing pool balls, just bounce them on the pool tables, because it screws up the felt and whatever. And so he built this thing, and I don't even know how to describe it, but it's a big, long raceway, and it's got a trough on each end.
Yeah.
And then the boys will make a design.
Our church has one of those.
so those started at the Rapid City Club for Boys, and they had since, now I know they're in Florida because they had an employee go from our club to a Florida Boys Club, and he built them there, and now there's leagues for carpet ball.
It's kind of like the game you play in Canada all the time.
At shuffleboard.
Yeah, it's similar. A similar feeling as that.
But it's awesome, and these you have to make a design.
I've heard of it,
and someone else has to make it, and you take turns, and whoever wins, knocks in all the balls first wins. And
that's great.
Yeah, it's awesome. Anyway, that started there.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but then they have older boys' rooms where maybe it's video games, or they have outdoor room where they teach. Last year they would bring in deer and they would process deer and show the kids how to break down a deer and package it and grind their own burger and everything. I mean, it has everything. It truly has everything. They have a library. They have homework help programs. There's boys that would come in failing and they walk away from, after a year going through their homework help program and their A and B students. And I mean, it's just is truly an incredible facility.
That is. The support for those kids in the community is unbelievable. When you were growing up, I mean, you're blessed. You're blessed that you had parents that were involved and you got to do some of those things. You got to learn how to process a deer with your dad.
Yep.
Right? And I think when people are young, there's a certain level of egocentrism that you think that every person has the same experience as you, whether you are in a good situation or a bad situation. That's why generational poverty is a thing, because people that grow up in that situation, they think that that's what life is.
Sure.
And so really, at what point did you realize, I'm unique, that I had an upbringing that was what society would consider to be average and normal versus some of the lives that these boys have, that they are relying upon, the club or community members to support them?
I think I had enough wherewithal that I recognized it, but I didn't really appreciate it, if that makes sense. And I that reminded me of a story. Growing up, my dad, when we would go out, there would be a lot of times where my dad would, we'd go fishing and he'd stop somewhere and grab a boy that wanted to go with us, and I would be a little resentful of it, but for the most part it was just another kid to play with. It usually meant we rarely ever would stop and get sodas and candy on the way up, but if we had one of those boys, we'd stop and get soda and candy, and it wasn't until I was older that I recognized that was probably the only soda and candy that kid got for a while, and that was, my dad would just recognize kids that had a little bit of a drive to go in the outdoors, and he would just take them along, and it would have been probably 6 or 7 years ago. I was at a gas station filling up my pickup, and I happened to look across, and a guy was looking at me, and he kind of had a goofy smile, and I remember thinking, what's this guy's deal, And so I kind of avoided eye contact, finished pumping gas, and get done, and I'm getting ready to jump in my pickup, and the guy just yells, "Oyler!" And I looked back, and I'm like, oh man, who is this guy? I have no idea who he is. And he just said, "Hey, how's your dad? Is he still at the boys club?" And as soon as he said that, I was like, I know exactly who this is one of those boys that my dad would pick up and take fishing with us and spent a lot of time with. I mean, now we're talking 30 some years had passed, so I didn't recognize the guy at all. But he started talking life, work, family, and he said he was married and had 2 boys, and he pulls out his phone and he starts showing me pictures of his boys, and here we are in the Bighorns camping. Here we are. This is my son's first year. This is us hiking.
That's awesome.
Wherever. And I was like, holy cow, that's awesome. You guys spend a lot of time in the outdoors. And he just started bawling. And he goes, if it wasn't for your dad and the boys club, he goes, none of this would have been possible. I never would have been exposed. He goes, my mom was a good person, and she tried her hardest, but I would have never been able to learn about any of this. And he said, I with my mom being a good person, he goes, I wasn't gonna end up on drugs or dead, but he goes, my life is better because of what your dad taught me and what I learned at the boys club. And it's like, so here we are, 2 35-year-old men crying, hugging each other, thinking, geez, man, this, and that's when it really hit home for me, like this
something special.
This is something, and we gotta keep Hooked on Hardwater going, because 10 years from now, it might be one of those boys that learned how to ice fish with Jason Durrett. Well, 6 years from now when you retire. But I mean, truly, because you know how it is running events. I'm sure you with UPL, sometimes the question like, why do I do this? Why do I even bother? But
then you have those moments where you're like, I know why I do this.
Exactly. And that's definitely, if I ever start feeling sorry for myself for how much work it is or how stressful it is, it's just, you think of that story and think, yep, got to do it. We have to do this. You
have to be so incredibly proud of your dad, and he has to be so incredibly proud of you.
Absolutely. No, 100%. And, he has me come down and meet new board members and whatever, and I mean, that's the first thing out of his mouth. The Hooked on Hardwater was his idea, and kind of going off track here a little bit, but with Hooked on Hardwater, when we first started, we thought, can we do this to where we can raise money for the boys club too? And I'd always said, if we do raise money, I don't want to pay the light bill. I want to pay for outdoor activities. That's what I want us to do. And the first year we were able to raise enough money to justify the amount of work and effort that it was. And last year was our 10th year, and at the end of last year we'd raised over $1 million.
That's crazy.
Unbelievable.
And so it is now the biggest fundraiser that the Club for Boys has, because like I say, it's not part of an organization, so there is no outside funding. It's all private donors and activities like this that fund that place. And the membership for a boy is $12 a year.
Good.
$12 a year is all it
great.
is. And so someone's got to, if they're there for one day and eat 2 meals, everything.
Let's say that one of our listeners, wants to either donate to your event for the fundraising drive, or if they wanted to donate and sponsor a kid that they wanted to pay their membership for a year. How could they go about doing that?
So what we had that after I think year 1 or 2, we had people ask that exact question. How can I be involved? I can't come to the banquet. I'm too far away. How can I do it? And I think it was Scott Brower that came up with the idea. He just said, what if you have a sponsor boy? And for $100, you're sponsoring the event for that boy. You're making sure, because we outfit them, because a lot of them, year 1, they were showing up in slide tennis shoes and a lightweight jacket because they just don't have that gear.
Sure.
And so we warehouse the gear and we get the boy outfitted. If he truly doesn't have that clothing, he can take it home with him, and then we'll just replace it. But yeah, we keep enough around to make sure that every boy is warm and has dry feet, and that sponsor boy is the best way to do that. And it also helps get people, outside of the area, the ability to be involved and be a part of it.
And they can do the same for the Club for Boys.
Yeah.
So like outside of the Hooked on Hardwater event, if they wanted to get involved, to Jason's question, there's other ways so they can reach out.
Yeah, the Club for Boys, I think it's the clubforboys.org is the website, and I think there's a donate now button on that if they just wanted to help support the cause.
Well, I feel
wonderful.
I feel bad that I've never been able to get out there, and I've wanted to so bad. And coming to this show, I've got tons of ice fishing gear, but you come to an event like this and you're like, maybe there's something that's going to stand out that I want to get. So I brought a little bit of fun money, and right now I'm going to put it out there. I'm sponsoring 2 boys.
Thank you, Mr. Durham.
So I don't get to
calling you old.
I don't get to buy any ice fishing gear while I'm at the show, but 2 boys get to go fishing now, and that means a lot more to me than getting a rod or something.
Yeah.
You're lucky there's a microphone between us, because everyone knows I'm a hugger, and I'd give you a hug right now.
I'd block it just like I did your dodgeball.
You'd see kissing on Ice Team podcast for the first time probably here. So
I hope some of the listeners step up too, because what I honestly, and when I was talking at the beginning of the program that I'm going to learn some things, I had no idea the whole impact of this. I mean, you have some in the back of your mind. I did not know what it entailed.
Yeah. So, I truly, this is a cool event because I can walk around. I bet 30 of my pros are here in this building right now, but every one of them will have a story that could probably bring a tear to your eye. But one of the most touching ones is Kenny Winkler. He's a pretty rough and gruff dude. After one of the events, he walks up to me and he's sobbing, crying. And I'm like, dude, what is going on? And he just said, he was walking with his boy. They fish for the morning. Gosh, we haven't even got to the fishing part of this.
Yeah.
If you haven't noticed, I fall off the rails pretty quick.
We all do.
But so morning of fishing, the boys show up on a bus. They go out and they fish with their pros. We have a big lunch that's sponsored by one of our great sponsors, and we take a group picture. They fish a little bit longer, and then by noon, 1 o'clock, it's time for them to get going back on the bus. Well, Kenny Winkler's walking his boy to the bus, and he just plops down on the ice and starts crying, and the boy does, and not Kenny, but the boy does, and Kenny's like, "What's the matter?" He's thinking, "Oh my gosh, did he get hurt? What happened?" And he goes, "I don't want to go home. Can I go home with you?" And so for Kenny, he's like, what has happened in this child's life that within a day and a half of knowing me, I'm the most important person in his life, and it just, there's stories like that. There's so many of them like that where it's like, what an impact we're making. And
really makes you take things for granted. You know what I mean? Like, you think about it and you're like, we have it very, like you said, it was special. Like, dad helped you clean your first deer, like, and the things that we have, and you put things in perspective there, and you nailed it. Like, can't imagine that in that moment, the most important thing in that kid's life was just going home with Kenny.
Yeah. Dan Hogue, his boy begged him to come watch him play basketball because he doesn't have anyone to watch him play basketball that night. Can you come to my game tonight? And Dan's like, "Oh, we got our banquet, otherwise I would." And it's like, "Oh, I won't have anybody there." And it's like, man, it just, there's story after story after story like that.
Yeah, I've heard a bunch from the guys that have left your event over the years that either come back through Clam Seed, a show, and this and that. So
sure,
we all know what you're doing is touching a pile of kids.
Yeah.
And I also think you're, in some way, shape, or form, metaphorically or literally, you're being a role model for other organizations that look to do this. Like, we've done some stuff in the Twin Cities with the Boys and Girls Club of Minneapolis and St. Paul. And on a smaller scale, we've seen some of those feelings. Like, I met you an hour ago and you're hugging. Right. You know what I mean? Like, I look at like my son, like, he's known the both of you for years. He's probably not going to hug you.
He hugs me because I force him to.
Yeah, but like, you know what I mean? Like, just to show you, like, some of these kids are just yearning for it. They don't have any of that parental or father figure in their life. And it's crazy.
Yeah.
For a child too, for their development, I'm going to go on to the whole educator child development platform for a second. That physical contact is a big thing. Mm-hmm. Even between a young boy and his father, that is part of what drives their development. Mm-hmm. And for any child, contact with their parent is essential for development.
Yeah.
So to give a hug, good for them, good on them, because they need that.
Yep. That's awesome. Okay, well, talking about the fishing a little bit up there, I've heard, I'm not going to mention lake names, but I've heard opportunities to catch giant bluegills, perch. Obviously, we've talked trout. I've seen you with walleyes on social media many times. So, reverting back to fishing in the Blackhills, Rapid City, what don't you have other than eel pout? Like, you have good pike fishing. You have it all.
Yeah, we do have it all. And one thing that's really unique is in South Dakota, if you get west of the Missouri River, there are no natural lakes. Everything is a reservoir or a dam or some type of impoundment. There are no natural lakes anywhere. And so with that, we don't have a ton of huge lakes. Obviously the river has some big quote-unquote lakes, but yeah, in the Black Hills, our biggest lake is 800 acres, and that's it. But it has monster lake trout in it, monster pike in it, really good bluegill fishing in it, and a lot of rainbow and brown trout. That's Lake Pactola, and there's just a ton of great fishing in that one. And
are they clear lakes? Are these lakes very clear?
Yeah,
okay. Is that typical out there?
For the most part. The next one would be Sheridan Lake, or Deerfield Lake, I guess. That's another crystal clear one, but then that's where we hold hooked on Hardwaters at Deerfield Lake, and that's full of perch, lot of perch. There'll be times you'll see a Vexilar screen and there'll be 30 feet of perch below you, And unfortunately, only one of them might be over 12 inches or over 10 inches probably. So,
Sure.
but a lot of fish, and it has lake trout in it and rainbow trout and brook trout. But then Sharon Lake is like the hidden jewel as far as I'm concerned. It used to be this historically monster perch fishery, and there was nothing to go out and catch a limited 12 to 14 inch perch, and they just, I don't know if they get beat on too much. Anglers are getting better at catching fish, but then it turned into a bluegill fishery, and that's where we're catching 1 pound bluegills out of this thing now. And our Craig Teason Memorial Tournament, we do that, so it's just camaraderie for the pros. It's just for the pros and the sponsors. They can fish it, but then you weigh in your 5 best panfish. I don't care what species, what lake you catch it on, as long as it's a public lake in the Blackhills. And Tyler Ray won it last year, and he had 5 fish, and he had I think it was just barely over 4 pounds and 5 bluegills. I mean, that's a pretty good bag of fish
that's
anywhere.
A good bag
so
of fish, yeah.
0.8 of a pound average.
Yeah.
So, if somebody's never been out there and they want to go and they want to stay and they want to ice fish, what's available for accommodations that's going to be a really great setup for them?
So we use the High Country Guest Ranch. That's where we stay for. That's where they house all the pros between High Country Guest Ranch and then Nicholson Trail Lodging. It's all this complex of vacation homes that they're privately owned, but then they're managed by those 2 entities. And I recommend anyone to go there because they're within, 10 miles of Deerfield, 15 miles of Sheridan Lake, and 20 miles of Pactola. And I mean, it's just outside of the Hill City area. And I mean, they're all cabins, so you'd want a group of people to justify having it, but it's perfect for that kind of a setup.
What are some of your more memorable, like you personally now, some of your more memorable fish catches in that region, in that area? Like what stands out? What are some of your trophy catches out there?
For me, I caught, it would have been a lake trout that I would suggest was probably, I would say,
You know who they are?
no,
Oh,
I don't either.
I don't
They
know.
just said turn away.
Okay.
yeah.
But I caught a lake trout that would have rivaled the state record, but I didn't want to risk killing it, so I let it go. That's a personal one, but truly my favorite one was I guided a family out of Washington, D.C., and they had only ever fished once before. This was open water, but they'd only ever fished one time before, and I was like, well, with that, we're not going to go after lake trout. We're just going to go catch bluegills and rainbow trout just so we can get some catches in the book.
Get reps.
And it was enough that I had Brian Kavanaugh help me, and so he had the mom and the 2 daughters in his boat, and I had the dad and the son in my boat, and so we turned it into a competition, catching bluegills back and forth. And the girls, I didn't have spot lock on my boat, Brian did, and so the girls were whooping us. And so the son was kind of feeling sorry for himself. He goes, let's just go cast for rainbow trout instead. And I'm like, all right, we'll go cast for rainbow trout. And so we did that, and I happened to look over, and the dad was sitting in his seat kind of nodding off. You could tell he was bored. I'm like, all right, this is the dude that's going to write me a check, so I got to make sure he has fun. So I nudge him. I'm like, hey,
only
let's...
laugh because we understand.
Right. And so I nudge him. I was like, hey, let's go after a lake trout, because I was out 2 days earlier and caught like a 20-pound lake trout. And he's like, I thought you said you can't catch them this time of day. And I'm like, oh, yeah, we probably can't, but at least it's interactive fishing. You're fishing big baits, and you're staying busy, so you're not going to be falling asleep. And so we go over to one of my favorite waypoints, and so I get the dad set up, and I'm like, all right, you're going to drop down, hit bottom, just reel it up twice, and just start jigging fairly aggressively. I had to retie for the son, and so dad drops down, and I'm retying the son, and dad's like, I'm snagged on something. I'm like, we're in 56 feet of water here. You're not snagged on anything. And he keeps lifting, and I'm like, yeah, he's snagged on something. I'm like, all right, give me the rod. So I pull down, and I start lifting up, and then it starts pulling back. I'm like, yeah, you're not snagged on anything. And the dad's eyes got really big. I thought you said we weren't going to catch anything. I was like, well, I lied. We're going to catch something.
Yeah.
And So he starts fighting this fish, and right away I could tell it was big. It was a big, big fish. And so as he's fighting it, this son keeps saying, "Dad, what's that feel like? How's it feel?" And I think the son was probably 14 or 15 years old at the time. He's just really, really intrigued by everything, and so the dad's fighting it a little bit longer, and he gets it up to the boat once, and it peels off drag, and so he's fighting it again, and the son keeps asking, and finally the dad kind of winks at me, and I don't remember the son's name, but he's like, "You're going to have to take over. My shoulder's getting sore." And so he hands the rod off to the son. And so then the son fights it, and then the dad starts filming. And it ended up being a 22-pound lake trout. And nothing went right. We should not have caught that fish, but we got it in the boat. And to this day, that dad still messages me. He's like, "Yeah, we went on a trout fishing trip in Virginia. Still doesn't beat Pactola, though."
Yeah.
And about once a year, I'll get a message from him. And for me, it's a memorable fish just because I know that they're going to talk about that fish for the rest of their lives. And the best part was those girls, by then, I told Brian, I texted him, said, "We're going to go to Waypoint 107. We'll be over there." And they were there to watch the tail end of him catching that fish, the son reeling in that fish. So then, even though the girls whooped their butt on bluegills, they lost that day. So
22-pound lake trout.
yeah,
That's
it was
awesome.
incredible. Just such an incredible fish and experience to be a part of, that's for sure. And that, you guys can attest to that. When you create those memories, is there anything better?
No. Never. If people recite and repeat certain fish catches or moments in a boat or on the ice, like you've made an impact.
Yep.
For sure. Like
100%.
something they're going to remember. And one thing too is you don't know what is going to be that memory. And I say that because I've had clients that a 23-inch pike is that memory.
Yeah,
Sure.
sure.
And obviously a 22-pound lake trout would be a memory for any of the three of us as well. But you just never know. It's some of the fish stories that you've been a part of or Jason's been a part of as guides or whatever, it doesn't have to necessarily always result in a trophy fish.
Sometimes it's not even about a fish.
Yeah. It could be someone cooking cheese on the boat.
I had a
Which Jason does all the time.
I do. I had a gentleman out with his wife this summer or this fall who he caught a silver pike, which was a big deal. For the listeners who don't know what a silver pike is, it's a genetic mutation of a northern pike, and it's very rare. And we have them in our area. And the guy caught one, and he was just stoked about it. And then we fed a bald eagle twice. In fact, the second time I threw this fish that we were feeding it about to the guy's rod tip from the boat, and the eagle came down and got it. And I told the husband and wife, "This is the closest you'll ever come to a live eagle. Like, I've never been that close to one before. This was incredible." Well, the guy had back surgery the prior year. He had been having unexplained seizures and had a seizure so violent that he shattered a vertebrae.
Oh my gosh.
And this was his first fishing trip they had been out on, and he brought his back brace with, but he was concerned about how rough it was going to be on the lake, if we were going to be casting big lures, that kind of stuff. And at the end of the trip, it's starting to get dark, and the man and woman got in their vehicle and started to drive away as I'm backing in the boat trailer, and I see him hit his brakes. And he comes down to the dock, and he says, "I just wanted to let you know this was the best day I've had in years. Thank you." And he's in tears, and he just gave me this big hug, and it's like, there is no monetary tip that you could ever give me that would be better than that.
Yeah.
Hands down.
Yeah. Those moments are worth their weight in gold. And I think oftentimes they happen when you, like, this statement will make sense to both of you and your stories you just told. They happen when you least expect it.
For sure. They catch you off guard sometimes.
Absolutely. That's usually when they happen. And sometimes it's when you're down and out or things aren't going the way they should, and all of a sudden things just find a way of working out.
Yep,
and those are oftentimes those moments that you really remember. Like, I remember this time everything was going wrong, and then boom, something happens.
A 22-pound lake trout.
That's right.
Yes. I mean, we could sit and talk all day. We've been talking for an hour and 10 minutes. We could talk here forever. I mean, Craig, what do you got cooking the rest of this winter? Do you have anything? Do you have any trips planned? Anything you're planning to do? Anywhere else you're planning to fish? Or what's on your radar the next, say 4 or 5 months?
biggest one for me is Cascade. I have not done Cascade yet. I think I'm going to go up the Don Cox and that crew.
Yeah.
When are you guys going?
I think it's early February.
Okay.
Can you change that to like late March? Because that's when I have spring break.
Are you going to Cascade
time,
late March?
I have the first time in my teaching career I have a spring break. I have 9 days off. I've never had that before.
Why is that?
Because we've never had a spring break. We're very careful and protective about summer because in our area we function, everything revolves around tourism. So these high school kids, we need them to scoop the ice cream and clean the cabins and do all of those important, workforce things. And so we just kind of condensed all of our other days that we would typically have off during the year to be able to have 5 days off in 1 week and then the 2 weekends on the end.
Huh.
So it equates to 9 days that I'll have off. I have 100 things planned in my mind.
Late March?
Late March. Cascade. Oh, I would love.
Does it still have decent ice?
I don't know.
Late March? I guess I don't know enough about it.
Our
But
team
With
always
my
goes
luck,
in
no.
February.
No,
Hey.
it won't.
I guarantee I'll have good ice in the Black Hills.
Now that is a
Have
good
I sold
thought.
you on the Black Hills yet?
When is Hooked on Hardwater?
Late February. February 24th.
Can you move that to late March?
I can't. I would like to, but I can't. But here, I just had an interesting thing just come across the desk here about an hour ago. So a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, the state record South Dakota walleye
Yeah.
was
I
broke.
saw that.
Got broke again today. Like
What?
exploded today. It was 16.4, 17.8.
Whoa.
Today was caught today.
Well, I don't know if it was caught today, but it was made official today.
Imagine being the poor
17.8.
guy that caught the 16.5 pounder.
That state record held for over 20 years. He got to hold it for 14 days.
Oh my gosh.
Isn't that incredible?
Same lake.
It's the Missouri River,
Missouri
so part of that
River.
Oh yeah,
system. Yeah.
So there's
yeah.
something special going on
Yeah.
right now. Where
And I heard
all
a
eyes
rumor of
on
an
that
18
river.
pounder that was caught, but I don't
was
know
just
that
gonna
that's
say,
been official.
all eyes on that river right now.
Yeah,
Then because
100%.
it's got to be getting pounded.
It will be now.
People are going to be flocking to that. So the
Why
16
didn't I
pounder.
bring my boat?
Yeah, I mean the 16 pounder. I mean people are probably like phenomenal 20 years anomaly, right?
Right.
But 2 weeks later to see another one break it,
Yeah.
now you're going to see that system get pounded.
Yep.
Because people are like,
there's the guy
something's
that was
going
just
on.
telling me about it right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
18.5, he's saying. Tyler Ray saying 18.5.
Broke twice today, he said.
Broke twice today.
Yeah, it went to 17.8, and then they said it just went to 18.5 by another guy.
Wow.
So the second
That's a
guy,
walleye there.
the second guy held the state record for hours.
Minutes. Yeah.
My gosh.
I've
Isn't that
probably
insane?
I've held a fish in the boat out of water longer than he held the record.
18.5.
Wow.
Holy cow. Well, you know,
So
we
anyway,
could-
you were talking about trips. There's a good
Yeah.
chance I'm going to be ice fishing the river this winter.
my gosh, I don't even know what that would look like, but wow. I mean, we could talk for hours here. Craig, you're always a pleasure to be around, man. We've known each other, like we said at the beginning, for years. I'm glad this one came together. Like when Jason and I were talking about it, I'm like, you know what? Oyler.
Yeah.
You're our guy this trip. We're going to have some fun. Talk Hooked on Hardwater. In typical fashion, we went off on all kinds of tangents, which is part of the fun. I think people that are listening, watching, should definitely follow Hooked on Hardwater, the Club for Boys in Rapid City. There's ways to be involved, things you can do. And, I mean, if that's not your local hangout, there's probably something similar to that all over the place. Like we talked about the Boys and Girls Club in Minneapolis, St. Paul. There's probably a similar feeling type establishment organization in your area or region that you can support and get behind. Safe to say?
That, and I also think, I have a lot of people that ask how they could start something like Hooked on Hardwater in their area, and I don't know that it could be duplicated just because the Rapid City Club for Boys it's amazing the community support it has. But I'm sure there are places like it. But just say, go to the local Boys and Girls Club and just see if you can get 4 of your buddies and take a handful of kids out and just spend a day. It doesn't have to become an event, but just take some kids fishing that might not have that opportunity.
Absolutely.
Love it.
Well, before we sign off, Jason, Craig, anything else you want to add? Anything you want to leave our listeners with before we get back to more work here in the booth and have some more fun?
For me, I just want to say thank you to Clam and Ice Team for all the opportunities that it has presented to me. And, I've always been a very outgoing, part of the ice fishing world. You know, I mean, I don't think I hesitated to come up and start harassing you on the first day I met you, but you know, Hooked on Hardwater doesn't happen without the connections that have been made through all of this. And you know, I mean, it's just such an incredible, I don't even know if a machine, I guess it would be the best thing you could call Clam, because it truly is a machine, and the amount of great people that are involved with it has just been such an honor to be a part of it, and you know, get to know everyone and become friends with everyone. And you know, truly, I talk about that first day meeting Dave Gens and even Jason Mitchell. You know, first time I really ever got to talk to him, he said, "Hey, I'm going to come fish with you in 3 months," and I'm like, holy cow, how do I get prepared for this? You know, but it just, there again, you know, just it was a great avenue to open up the Blackhills to the rest of the world, because it really was untouched. And a lot of people ask what was my motivation for kind of exploiting what the Blackhills has to offer, and a lot of it was for selfish reasons, because we didn't have a lot of selection. And you know, we touched on lake trout fishing. When I first started lake trout fishing, I couldn't go anywhere in town and buy stuff, and that was before Google. So I was calling guides up in Canada saying, "Hey, what do I need to use to catch a lake trout?" And you know, just trying to get as much info as I could that way. And by bringing, you know, the notoriety to the hills, we also brought the opportunity to get some more baits and custom baits and stuff like that for our lake specifically. So,
well, Craig, it's been an honor having you on the team.
Well,
the feelings are mutual. So everything you've done, everything you continue to do, we can't appreciate enough, man.
Why does this sound like a farewell speech?
No.
Am I getting the pink slip as soon as we sign off here?
Yes, you are. People's lives are better because of you.
Yeah.
I don't know about that, but
it's true.
Amen.
But thank
I
you,
agree.
fellas.
And what I would say in closing is what I say at the end of every podcast, and I think there's probably no more appropriate time than now to say, be safe, be smart, and be a hero. Take a kid ice fishing.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for tuning in. You had Craig Oyler and Jason Durham. We're at the Dakota Angler Ice Institute. You probably saw a lot of people walk past while we talked to you for an hour and 17 minutes. And can't thank you guys enough. We will catch you guys next time. Tune in. There'll be more episodes this season. And just follow along and go out there and have a good time on the ice and be safe.